Next topic, we are going back to COVID-19, and the topic now at hand is how Ayush therapies responded to COVID. I want to introduce our next speaker or a set of speakers here. First one is Vaidya P. Ram Manoharji. Uh, Ram Manoharji is an Ayurvedic physician with a postgraduate degree in and presently serves as research director of Amrita School of Ayurveda, Amrita Vishwa Vidyapitham, Kollam, Kerala. He was a PI on Indian side of the first ever National Institute of Health (NIH) USA funded research study to scientifically evaluate Ayurvedic interventions. He is a member of expert group of WHO for standardization of international Ayurveda terminologies. He is also on the working group of education of the Niti Aayog for formulation integrative health policy. He is research advisor for Indian National Science Academy, Central Sanskrit University, and National Institute of Ayurveda. Dr. Ram Manohar is also a member of the Interdisciplinary Research and Development Task Force of Ministry of Ayush for response to COVID-19 pandemic. So Vaidya Ram Manoharji will be presenting in collaboration with Dr. Girish Tillu. Dr. Girish Tillu is a MD. He is trained in Ayurvedic medicine and is pursuing research at the Interdisciplinary School of Health Sciences, located at Savitribai Phule University of Pune in India. Dr. Tillu serves as the principal investigator for Ayush Center of Excellence. He is an assistant professor at the Center for Complementary and Integrative Health, Interdisciplinary School of Sciences, Savitribai Phule University of Pune. Welcome both Dr. Ram Manoharji and Dr. Girish. Dr. Ram Manoharji will begin with the presentation, and he will be talking about what is the current state of Ayush therapies and the research around Ayush therapies in response to COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Ram Manoharji, welcome, and you can begin your presentation by sharing your screen. Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you, Dr. Rahul Naiskarji, for the kind invitation. It's a real honor to be present today in this discussion and to share the current, some thoughts on the current status of research and the practice of Ayush therapies. So at the very outset of the pandemic, the Prime Minister of India, Sri Narendra Modi ji, urged the Ayush community in a meeting to pitch in to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic, and also at the same time to refrain from making false claims and exaggerated claims regarding the cure of this pandemic. So this set the tone for an unprecedented response from the Ayush community, and the ministry received about 2,000 proposals in less than 15 days from various sectors of the Ayush field. And about 1,300 proposals came from Ayurveda, followed by 700 under homeopathy and 100 each for Unani and Siddha. And in fact, this even gave rise to the perception that the COVID-19 crisis indeed inspired a research culture in Ayush disciplines. This response from the Ayush community to the COVID-19 pandemic is really unprecedented. So if you look at some of the numbers here from the government side, the number of COVID-19 related studies initiated are about 104. But if you look at the CTRI, out of the 924 registered trials, 240 are related to Ayush. At one point of time, Ayush trials even outnumbered, the trials in biomedicine. About 250 are related to Ayush, out of which 150 is Ayurveda, 23 Yoga, 7 Unani, Siddha, 25, and Homeopathy, 35, and Naturopathy, 5. Out of these, there are about 85 clinical studies. Clinical studies predominate, and this is in contrast to what is usually the trend. There are more preclinical studies. And there are preclinical and experimental studies also. In spite of the challenges, there has been a collaboration between Ayush and DBT, and 19 preclinical experimental studies include 13 through this collaboration, about 38 prophylactic studies, COVID-19 treatment studies, 31 studies, out of which 20 are exploring Ayurveda as an add-on therapy, 11 as standalone, and then there are observational studies, survey studies, and about 135 study sites across the country have been deployed to explore the role of Ayush interventions in managing this pandemic. And about 54 of these studies have been completed, and 20 manuscripts are drafted for publication, and about 6 of them have been recommended by an advisory panel for publication. So if you look at the government-initiated studies, Ayurveda dominates again with 60 studies in Ayurveda, 20 in homeopathy, 11 in Siddha, 3 in Unani, and Yoga and Naturopathy, 10 studies. Now, there have been a lot of prophylactic studies, and a wide range of classical Ayurvedic formulations are being repurposed. But some of the prominent ones I would like to list here: Ashwagandha, Vidania, Somnifera, Guduchi, Ghanvati, based from Tinospora cordifolia, Sudarshan Ghanavadi, which is a multi-herbal formulation, Chamanaprasha, also a multi-herbal formulation, neem capsule, and many other multi-formulation interventions are being studied in various research initiatives. If you look at the clinical studies for management of COVID-19, some of the formulations and herbs that are prominently figuring are Ayush 64, which is a multi-herbal formulation developed by the Central Council for Research in Ayurvedic Sciences for the treatment of malaria. Guduchi Ghanvati again, which is Tinospora cordifolia. Then we have licorice, Glycyrrhiza glabra, known as Yashtimadu, a combination of Guduchi and Pipali, Tinospora cordifolia, and Piper longum, and Ashwagandha and Shuti. So some of the herbs that are used for prophylactic studies are also seen in the interventions here, and then other multi-formulation interventions. Now, many of these studies there are interim, reports, analysis, and preliminary drafts, and only few have got published. But if you look at the key outcomes, the trend is like this: there is a less incidence of COVID-19 amongst the Ayush intervention group, and the onset of influenza-like illness symptoms have been found to be less in Ayurveda groups. Less patients progressing to severe illness when they receive Ayush interventions, recovery in less number of days. And if you look at the reports from practitioners who have had a little bit more freedom in states where they were allowed to intervene, they have also had the opportunity to, intervene in more severe cases of COVID-19, because most of the formal trials on Ayurveda have been restricted to mild or moderate presentations of COVID. But from these practitioners and a few published case reports, we see that in severe presentations, in the beginning stages of severe cases, Ayurveda seems to be also having an important role to play. Now, what's very interesting here is also that the Ministry of Ayush, with the vision of the Prime PM, has taken a lot of efforts to ensure the quality of these research studies. And a lot of effort has been taken to ensure that only good studies get published. So a project monitoring unit has been constituted, and research study outcomes are being monitored before submission for publication. And this has, to some extent, maybe slow down the process of publication, but at the end, this will also ensure that what is published will be more credible. So out of a total of 20 manuscripts so far received by the project monitoring unit, 14 are under review, 5 have been submitted to various journals, and 1 has been finalized for submission, and the progress is being made, every day. It's also interesting to see that a lot of publications have come from the Ayush sector in response to the COVID pandemic, and this should be assessed in the light of the total number of publications from the Ayush sector, which is comparatively low. So if you look at that numbers, then the COVID-19 pandemic has certainly stimulated the publication of more research papers from the Ayush sector. So we have a wide range of publications, review papers, preclinical studies, treatment protocols, public health approaches, case reports. So, and I would like to share a glimpse of a few interesting studies here. There was a prospective clinical study of an Ayurveda regimen in COVID-19 patients, and this study reported that patients on the treatment group could be discharged earlier than those from the control group. And here is another interesting study. This has been done by doctors from the All India Institute of Medical Sciences. They did a survey, a telephonic survey, to find out the trend of the use of complementary and alternative medicines. And they found that about 30% of people were using, the group that they surveyed. And very interestingly, there were no reports of very serious adverse events or complications in the group, in the people who were using these complementary and alternative medicines. Now, there are a couple of case reports here. One published very early, which is referring to an encounter very early on in the onset of the pandemic, but was published a few months later. This is also through a telephonic interview. A patient was treated for COVID-19 in the US and recovered very quickly. There is another case report where a patient on hypoxia admitted to a hospital and not responding to treatments and becoming more and more oxygen dependent, recovered very quickly with Ayurvedic intervention. So these are some of the other, just a glimpse of the kind of publications that have come out from the Ayush sector. And this also includes, very interestingly, a first of the kind attempt from the Ayurvedic community to profile this new disease, based on Ayurvedic principles of pathogenesis, pathology, etiology. And it's not just one view. There have been many people who have looked at the pandemic from different perspectives from within the Ayurvedic thought process. And all this indicate a kind of, very creative response from the Ayush sector. So there have been attempts to repurpose many classical Ayurvedic formulations, and in silico studies have quite a lot of in silico studies have been done. There have been challenges in doing in vitro studies. And so I think most of the interesting encounters have also happened at the level of, the practitioners who had to respond at the ground level. And it's very likely that the case reports from these practitioners in the future will be of very great interest to understand how Ayush responded. So to summarize and conclude, this COVID-19 pandemic has created a situation which is unprecedented. Ayurveda, Ayush systems has been, geared up to meet an infectious disease, that to a pandemic. But the general perception is that Ayurveda is suited for non-communicable diseases. An interdisciplinary task force was constituted, bringing together scientists, medical doctors, public health experts, and Ayurveda physicians together, to create an Ayush response to COVID-19. And this saw the initiation of public health initiatives. All this happened right from the beginning. In April, this task force was constituted. Health advisories, standardized Ayush treatment guidelines, training and deployment of Ayush manpower, utilization of Ayush infrastructure. All this happened, through these initiatives. The Ministry of Ayush was very quick to respond and, notify permission to the Ayush community to conduct clinical trials. It released a call for proposals, allocated funds for clinical studies very early on, at the onset of the pandemic. The products in the market were regulated, exaggerated claims, false claims were, promptly curbed, notifications were issued. And as I was mentioning, the project monitoring unit was constituted to scrutinize study reports before submission. And then most importantly, in October, the Ayush protocol This is perhaps for the first time that an Ayush protocol is being incorporated in the national treatment guideline for a public health initiative for COVID-19, and publications dealing with diverse aspects of Ayush approaches are seen. So thank you very much. Namaste.
Manoharji, thank you for your presentation. I will now invite Dr. Tillu to begin his presentation. Dr. Tillu is going to educate us about the lessons learned during this fight against the COVID-19 pandemic from the Ayush therapies perspective, and most importantly, what lies in the future, the bright future that we have ahead of us. Dr. Tillu, please begin. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rahulji and the GIST, Vidyan Bharati and DST for this invitation and opportunity to share these thoughts on lessons learned and future plans for Ayush therapies in COVID-19 pandemic. As we all know, the Ayush sector has been in the focus of COVID-19 pandemic right from the advice by Honorable Prime Minister on 7 tasks or Saptapadi to fight COVID-19 to various policy initiatives related to Ayush sector and people. If we plot various efforts and strategic initiatives for those are as Ayush response for COVID-19, those range from formation of task force that was very important for creation of conducive environment for Ayush propagation, research, education, and reaching out to people. Then various efforts by Ayush Ministry for the first time, as explained nicely by my colleague Ram Manoharji, and the recent publication of management protocol, that is a true integrative protocol. With this, we can observe the boost in the research for Ayush, and there are more than 240 trials registered at COVID-19. Out of them, 150 trials are from Ayurveda sector. If we look at the last 50 years publications on Ayurveda trials, they are around 180, but the trials, those are registered for COVID-19, they speak a lot about these increasing research. There are several lessons learned by various sectors of society, right? From government, practitioners, researchers, industry, academia, and most important by people. We learned that our perception for health is changing. We are really becoming concerned about health that we were never so much concerned about our own health. Importance of primary healthcare, home-based healthcare, that is again a new learning. Ayush is actually health promotion and disease prevention, and it is much more than just a materia medica. Research environment of Ayush institution, that was again very important learning by our institutions. And in clinical practice of Ayush, the boundaries of practice, they are really expanding. Dialogue with modern medical clinicians and scientists is improving, and we are progressing towards integrative medicine as our national health policy really expects that mainstreaming Ayush for people, that is really started. The changing perception about health, that people really experience the limitations of outsourced health in the lockdown period. Prevention became the priority, and revival of traditional knowledge we experienced, and the new generation also got exposed to kadha and gargles and steam and so many home-based intervention, and the dadima ka batua, again home remedy, got its place. Importance of research was perceived, and certainly everybody realized that this is a time to prepare for a new era of Ayush, and we want Ayush as accessible, available, affordable public health solution, and not just a mere specialization in clinical practice. Ayush practitioners, they got a very good lesson of interpreting COVID-19 in terms of Ayurveda or Ayush systems and be ready for the challenge. Ayush for acute infectious diseases was thought and practiced for the first time in the past. Reaching out to people for prevention in this pandemic, our practitioners, they were forced to do this job. Expansion of the boundaries of Ayurvedic practice, which were most of the time gets restricted to degenerative, chronic lifestyle diseases. Here we were forced to work even in intensive care units and even in hospitals where those are treating COVID patients. Immunity again became a buzzword, and traditional medicine to telemedicine, that was the journey of Ayush practice. Ayush research, we experience even the higher councils like Ministry of Ayush, CCRS, CSIR, ICMR, they are in dialogue. Trials on prophylaxis, Ayush trials in modern medical hospitals and clinics, they were initiated at large scale. Collaborations with modern clinicians was experienced by the researchers. Ethics committees, they were established and became active in institution, and that is going to help in future research of Ayush systems. Industry drive for research. Many of the Ayush industries, they were really forced to do research because of the demand for evidence and the claims driven by data. Educational institutes, they were at the forefront, and many of the national reputed institutions like All India Institute of Ayurveda, the newly formed ITRA, National Institute of Ayurveda, Jaipur Institute of National Institute of Unani Medicine, National Institute of Homeopathy Medicine, Yoga Institution, National Institute of Naturopathy. They were very active for Ayush research. Clinicians, they were inspired for research, and many of them, they are writing case reports. One of the very important event, we noticed that many of the journals and institutions of Ayush sector joined hands for training and empowering Ayush clinicians. Ayush Ministry was very much instrumental in development of an environment and various strategic initiatives like interdisciplinary Ayush research and development task force and the several efforts as explained by Ram Manoharji. That environment led to awareness and education at people's level. For example, Ayush Sanjeevani app, millions of say users of this app, they were really documenting what they were experiencing about Ayush interventions. Ayush research, practice guidelines, collaborations and projects with ICMR, talks with DCGI, CSIR, DBT, initiatives, those were the outcome of such strategic efforts. Industry, for example, I will mention way back in April, Ayush Ministry published two important documents. One document was alerting and say guiding Ayush industry about how their claims should be driven by research and evidence. But another document that talked about expediting the process of various medicines, those are being registered. And hence the balance of control and balance and the activities, those were expediting process and standard for research, that was clearly visible. Thus, Ayush in COVID times, as the latest editorial of Journal of Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine says, that India in COVID times, modern and wiser. This is the one line learning this pandemic really gave us. There are many challenges for Ayush sector, and documenting clinical experiences and learning is one of the very important thing that our clinicians should embark on understanding clinical variations and therapeutic outcomes of COVID-19. This is a very clinical problem that can be worked by Ayush clinicians, Ayurved clinicians, and modern medical practitioners together. Implementing whole system yet personalized approach is very required for Ayush-based interventions. Effective interventions for reducing mortality and morbidity by controlling non-communicable diseases. They are again in focus, cost-effective and home-based care. Expectation management is one of the challenges. Again, Ayush, how we are going to reach out to people in new normal, and hence interaction, interface, and integration with modern medical practitioners and modern scientists of pure sciences is again one of the important activities which Ayush sector need to do. We all know the famous words, that is Uttishtata Jagrata Prapya Varan Nibodhata. Arise, awaken, approach the great and learn. But the latter component of the verse is like the sharp edge of razor is the path. The wise say that is hard to tread and difficult to cross. And this is a future that awaits many efforts, series of efforts. COVID-19 has posed us many questions which we need to really address. For example, long COVID, for example, the manifestation of disease that ranges from asymptomatic to severe COVID in some of the patients, and the newer challenge of new strain. Control of comorbidities, post-COVID health challenge really awaits, and that is beyond measurement. Clinicians learning and experiences, research and education for immunomodulation, rehabilitation, mental health, Ayush for resilient India, Ayush with people, and Ayush for life. It is a long way to go, and COVID is more than a health challenges, and we need to work together for healthier world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Tillu, for your presentation.